And you can pray for me, because I'm about to get in trouble. You know, that song just is so incredible to me. It's been almost 30 years since I signed the paperwork and began to work with Billy Gray. And the day that I did that was an unusual day, I found out later, because Billy Gray was actually in the office in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which he hardly ever came to, because he was always on the road. But he came a couple of times a year, maybe for a meeting, and always for his annual physical at the Mayo Clinic. He would come to the office before going down to Rochester for that. And I had signed my paperwork, was just waiting for my flight that evening to get on the road. And it was about 11 o'clock, and I get this phone call in the little temporary office I'm in. And this person says, "This is Billy Gray." I understand you're our newest employee. Would you have time to have lunch with me? I thought to myself, who is this? You know, somebody is pulling my leg. But luckily I didn't say that. I said, I would love to have lunch with you. He said, well, in our cafeteria, over against the wall, we've got that line of little tables that's just for two. He said, let's eat over there so nobody will bother us, so we can just talk. I'm like, oh yes, that'd be a great place. I'd love to do that. So lunchtime comes and I walk in thinking there's going to be about 100 people standing around just laughing, thinking, this idiot really thought he was going to have lunch with Billy Graham. We really pulled one over on him. And Billy Graham was standing there waiting for me for lunch. We had lunch. We talked for several hours. It was amazing. I didn't get to ask any questions because he wanted to know all about me and my family and everything. Well, we fast forward now to the end of the year where we had something called Team and Staff Conference. And we go to the Team and Staff Conference, and I'm really excited because Billy Graham is going to be our opening speaker at our banquet that evening. So Ruth and I get to the hotel, and we go down early, of course, for the banquet that evening and to be able to hear Billy Graham. And we get off the elevator, and there's a large group of men standing, in front of the elevator. And as we make our way around them, one of the guys turns around, and it's Billy Graham. And he comes over and shakes my hand. He says, Jim, haven't seen you since we had lunch. It's so good. I'm so glad that you're here with us. And he looks over and he says, and you must be Ruth. He said, I am so glad you could be with us, Ruth. And don't you wish our kids could come? It'd be great if Luke and Laura were with you. And I had my kids and we could just have family time together. We'll have to think about that. Well, about that time, somebody comes to get him, of course, because he's got somebody he's got to see. And we start walking down the hall to go to the banquet. We get down a few steps and Ruth just stops. And she looks at me and she says, okay, I can die now. I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, I met Billy Graham, and he knew my name. Not I knew him, but he knew my name. Oh my goodness. How wonderful that is. I remember when we would have meetings, how it made me feel for Billy Graham to call me by name. But what will it be like in that glorious day when he calls your name and you get up out of that grave? How amazing is that? What a song. Thank you. Appreciate that. One of your other songs reminded me of today's message especially. It is well with my soul. Because, one of the lines in there says, though Satan may buffet, it's still well with my soul. You ever feel like life is just such a struggle? It's a struggle. I mean, we are Christians and try to be the best Christians we can. And we hate to even admit that, but it's just true. Life can be such a struggle at times. And so that's what I call it. I really debated between two titles. We'll get to the other title a little bit later in the message, and you'll see why I had a debate. But I want to talk to you about the struggle is real from the life of Joseph. And remember, our theme is it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. But if you'd like to look with me at Genesis chapter 40, I'm going to read a few verses here. Beginning with verse 1. It came to pass after these things that the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt offended the Lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief butler and the chief baker. So he put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the prison, the place where Joseph was confined. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them. So they were in custody for a while. Then the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, had a dream, both of them. Each man's dream in one night, and each man's dream with its own interpretation. And Joseph came into them in the morning and looked at them and saw that they were sad. So he asked Pharaoh's officers who were with him in the custody of the Lord's house, of his Lord's house, saying, "Why do you look so sad today?" And they said to him, "We have each had a dream, and there is no interpreter for it." So Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me, please." Then the chief butler told his dream to Joseph and said to him, "Behold, in my dream a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches. It was as though it budded. Its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. Then Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand." And Joseph said to him, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Now within 3 days Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your place. And you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand according to the former manner, when you were his butler. But remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and also I have done nothing here that they should put me into the dungeon." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said to Joseph, "I also was in my dream, and there were 3 white baskets on my head. In the uppermost basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, and the birds ate them out of the basket on my head." So Joseph answered and said, "This is the interpretation of it. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days Pharaoh will lift off your head from you and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh from you." Now it came to pass on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast for all his servants. And he lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants. Then he restored the chief butler to his butlership again, and he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted them. Yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. I want you to understand, the struggle is real. The struggles that we have are real. The struggle of metamorphosis from a caterpillar to a butterfly is both miraculous, extremely difficult, but absolutely necessary. You see, the caterpillar grows fat by eating the leaves of the plants around him. And when he gets fat enough and knows that it's time, he quits eating, hangs upside down from a twig or a branch, and spins a cocoon completely encapsulating itself. And then the miracle begins. It essentially digests itself, and the fluid begins the formation of an incredibly beautiful butterfly. When the formation is complete, it begins the arduous task of breaking free from the cocoon. And this is called the rumble. That process of breaking free of the cocoon is called the rumble. Look it up. It's there. This is one of the most important phases of the transformation. The struggle to break free is tremendously difficult, but absolutely necessary. You see, during the effort to break free, there is a liquid that is forced into the wings that only happens during this extreme exertion put forth during the struggle for freedom. And if the struggle is shortened or skipped by someone or something freeing the butterfly so it doesn't have to struggle, then that liquid is never forced into the wings. And they're very weak. In fact, too weak for the butterfly to even fly. And so it soon dies because it did not go through the rumble, the struggle to get to that place where it could fly. So you see, going through the rumble is vital for the butterfly to live. I was reading this and it reminded me of the ring announcer in boxing that is so famous. His name is Michael Buffer. And he did not only boxing, but many, many other really big events. And Michael Buffer developed a phrase that was his own. And before the fight would begin, after he had announced them in his own unique and special way, he would say, "Let's get ready to rumble!" Rumble. Interesting, because they were going to get down to business now. You know, it was going to be a struggle. And Michael Bumpers announced it. You know, it's interesting. Only in America could something like this happen. People like that so much that Michael Bumpers actually copyrighted that phrase. It took him several years, but he was granted the copyright because he developed the phrase. You hear that phrase in many, many occasions and events and everything else. Do you know that since he has copyrighted that Michael Bumpers has been paid residuals from that phrase to the tune of $400 million. Only in America can you come up with a phrase and make money like that. And when he announces a fight, any fight, he gets $200,000 for being a ring announcer, unless it's an elite fight. It doesn't even have to be a championship, just an elite fight between two top contenders. Then he gets $1.2 million for announcing a fight for about 5 or 10 minutes work. It's not bad work if you can get it, you know. $400 million. Amazing. Joseph had quite a rumble to go through. By the way, that was the other title that I thought. Let's get ready to rumble. Joseph had quite a rumble to go through before he was ready to complete God's plan that had been revealed to him through dreams when he was just a lad of 17 years old. Remember, Joseph first had the dreams. It was his brothers and his parents bowing down to him. The brothers were not impressed with this, so they stripped him of his coat when he came out to check on them one day, and they threw him in a pit. Then they sold him to the Ishmaelites who were on their way to Egypt. Upon arrival in Egypt, he was put on the auction block and sold as a slave to Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. Potiphar then put Joseph in charge of all that he owned because he saw that the Lord was with Joseph. But then Potiphar's wife tempted him and he refused her. So then she lied to Potiphar about the incident, and Joseph ended up in Pharaoh's prison. But the keeper of the prison, knowing that Joseph was close with his Lord and recognized the Lord working through him, put him in charge of all of the prisoners. None of this was his fault. You know, maybe he was a little bit braggadocious as a teenager, but how many teenagers don't go through a phase like that? Certainly didn't deserve the rumble that he had to go through. But the truth is, had he not gone through that rumble, he wouldn't have been prepared to accomplish the plan that God had for his life. And through all of this, Joseph never gave up on God. I'm sure that he had bad days. I'm sure that he had lots of questions. But he never gave up on trusting God because he knew something. It's going to be okay. Doesn't look good right now. Not a lot of fun right now. But God has made a promise. He always keeps his promises. It's going to be okay. Few of us will ever have to go through a rumble like Joseph's. But we all have our own rumble to go through. And to us, well, it feels just as severe as Joseph's did to him. We all know cases of people losing their jobs or their retirement. You know, I was thinking when I wrote this, in a church that I pastored, I remember a man, a good man. He had worked for the same company for over 40 years. He was 30 days from retirement. The company closed down and moved to Mexico, and he lost every cent of his retirement. After laboring for 40 years faithfully for the company, he was in the middle of his rumble. But we know of people who've lost their jobs or retirement, or divorces after many years of marriage take place, or the loss of health, or the premature death of children or a spouse, or other devastating losses. There are different ways that rumbles come in people's lives. And truth be told, we have to be honest, we sometimes wonder, where is heaven in this story? I mean, what good is going to come out of this? Why would God allow such things to happen? And we all say silly things like, well, if I was God, well, let me tell you what, if you were God, we'd all be in trouble. You wouldn't make a very good God. You know, things would be far, far worse than we see around us today. Does this struggle that we're going through, though, actually serve any positive purpose? Joseph surely asked questions like that from time to time. He easily could have with all that was going on in his rumble. But Joseph always took the high road. But it seems like even by taking the high road, that sometimes that road just leads over a cliff. It just gets worse sometimes. So, when is it all going to become clear to us? Since when does taking the high road lead you over a cliff? When? When, we ask? Well, really? Since Genesis chapter 3, when the fall took place in the Garden of Eden and sin entered the world. Disaster came in the form of the serpent, Lucifer, the fallen angel. As long as Satan prowls around like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour, we will be going through rumbles. He's going to create havoc and controversy and division among God's people. He'll look for preachers like Paul to put in prison. He'll exile pastors like John to remote islands. He'll afflict the friends of Jesus like Lazarus with diseases. But the truth is, all of his strategies really do backfire when we continue to believe and trust in Jesus in spite of the rumble, the difficult circumstances we find ourselves in. You see, the imprisoned Paul wrote most of his epistles that are included in the Bible while he was in prison. The most joyful one he ever wrote, Philippians, was while he was in prison. The banished John got a glimpse of heaven and wrote about it in the book of Revelation while on the Isle of Patmos. The tomb of Lazarus became the stage for one of Christ's greatest miracles when he raised his friend Lazarus from the dead. You see, Satan's intended evil becomes God's ultimate good. That's what it means when we see all things work together for good. It didn't say good things work together for good. All things. Bad things. Difficult things. They are. Our God is so powerful. He can take all things and work them together for good. Think about Joseph's rumble and how God worked all of those things together. And Joseph became the second most powerful man in the world and saved his family. Just like God had given him the dream. They bowed down before him. And he was their physical savior during that time. Don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that there are not things that crush us. Residing in a wheelchair, no food in the cupboard, no money in the bank, an empty chair where a loved one used to sit, trips to the cemetery, to the hospital, an aching heart. These are awful challenges that we face, and they are not easy. But remember this. God is not sometimes sovereign or occasionally victorious. He's not on the throne one day and absent the next. The Lord will not stop until he has executed all of his plans. It may not be in your time, and probably will not be in your time, but it will be in his time and on his schedule. Where you find yourself may baffle and confuse you, but understand this, it doesn't surprise God. Has it ever occurred to you that nothing ever occurs to God? He knew it far in advance. He's never surprised. You will never hear God say, "Ooh, I didn't see that coming." He's aware. He's well aware. And he is able to use our surprises for his purpose and our good. Take Joseph in prison, for instance. From an earthly point of view, this was a tragic conclusion to Joseph's life. Because you see, the vast majority of those that were put in that prison would die there. Satan was already chalking up a victory for the dark side, because they would either die through execution, disease, or old age, and never see the light of day again. As far as Satan was concerned, all of God's plans to use Joseph ended with the slamming of the prison doors. The devil had Joseph right where he wanted him, but so did God. God had Joseph right where he wanted him. You see, what Satan intended for evil, God used for a time of testing. Psalm 105, beginning with verse 18, says this about Joseph. They hurt his feet with fetters. He was laid in irons until the time that his word came to pass. The word of the Lord tested him, but the king sent and released him. The ruler of the people let him go free. He made him lord of his house and ruler of all his possessions. Satan's plan didn't work out very well, did it? In the Bible, a test is an external trial that purifies and prepares the heart. One of the psalmists wrote in Psalm 66, beginning with verse 10, "For you, O God, have tested us. You have refined us as silver is refined. You brought us into the net. You laid affliction on our backs. You have caused men to ride over our heads. We went through fire and through water, but you brought us out to rich fulfillment." You want fulfillment? You know, one of the famous singers who was young when most of us who are older were young, Mick Jagger, his most famous song about that time was, "I Can't Get No Satisfaction." I can't get no satisfaction because it only comes through God. This world, the rumble that you find yourself in, brings no satisfaction at all. Every day we are tested through people, pain, or problems. Stop a minute. Think about it. Some of them are pretty small. Heavy traffic, stupid drivers. You probably have never had a chance to be around them because they're all around me when I'm driving. For sure. But there's other things. Bad weather, aching joints. Oh, they're small. But even those things can make us bitter and angry. But if you see your troubles as being used by God for His glory and your maturity, then even the smallest incidents take on significance. James chapter 1, beginning with verse 3 says, "Knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience, but let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing." You see, as a boy, perhaps Joseph was prone to softness. Jacob, his father, had spoiled him and indulged him and given him special gifts. And he talked about his ambitions and his grand dreams. Even in Potiphar's house, he was the darling of the estate, quickly promoted, often noticed. But God knew the challenges that lay ahead. And He used the time he was unjustly imprisoned to prepare and strengthen His servant, even after he had given the good news to the king's butler or cupbearer. It was 2 years before the cupbearer remembered Joseph. 2 more years in prison after being there for quite some time. The keeper of the prison had put all of the prisoners under his care, his authority. Talk about a crash course in leadership. On Potiphar's estate, he was over willing servants or slaves of Potiphar. But here in prison, he was assigned to many who were unruly, disrespectful. After all, what could Joseph do to them? Put them in prison? They were already there. So, what could he do? But Joseph remained conscientious and caring over those under him. How do I know that? Because one day he noticed 2 of Pharaoh's former servants looking troubled, sad. He could have ignored them thinking, hey, they think they've got problems. I'm here through no fault of my own. I was lied about. Why am I here? And so even though he had been abandoned by his brothers, sold into slavery at a young age, he had a tender heart and a caring spirit that caused him to find out what was troubling these 2 men that were under his authority. So he stopped and he talked with them. After all, wouldn't compassion for others be a necessary quality to be found in the future director of a worldwide hunger relief program? Compassion seems like it would be necessary for that, don't you think? They related their dreams to Joseph, and God gave the interpretation of the dreams to him. But the question here is, would he share it? One interpretation to the cupbearer was very good, but the other to the baker was very bad. But Joseph did share it, and according to Scripture, he did it immediately. He didn't even have to go and pray about it or think about it. He told the cupbearer that he would live and be restored to his position, but the baker would be put to death. Would he share this truth, these interpretations? You think, why would he hesitate to share that? Well, Joseph hadn't had very good luck in sharing dreams with people. The last time he did something like that, His brothers sold him to Ishmaelites, and he went into slavery into Egypt. But this was a test, and Joseph passed it. You see, we're often in a place of testing to prepare us for the future. It may feel like prison to us sometimes. It may smell like a hospital. It may look like poverty. Our hearts may be breaking, and circumstances may appear to be unbearable. But the truth is this: God has not forgotten you. You're just in training. And doesn't he have the authority to train us as he sees fit? After all, the Bible tells us he is the potter. We are the clay. He's the shepherd. We're the sheep. He's the gardener. We're the branches. And he's the teacher. We're the students. Remember, all tests are temporary. They're limited in their duration. They will not last forever. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 6 says, "In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ." Oh, we're going to be tested. We need to make sure we stay true, even during testing. Now, here's our life lesson from Joseph today. Where you are now is not where you will be forever. So whatever your circumstances are, where you are now is not where you will be forever. So, it's going to be okay. And if it's not okay, yeah, it's not the end, because in the end, it's going to be okay. That's what Joseph knew. God is watching how you handle little jobs, how you handle testing. And if you're faithful, he'll give you more important jobs and more authority. Matthew 25, beginning with verse 21. His Lord said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord." So don't look at your times of testings as the worst part of your life. Learn to look at it as a time of preparation, because the truth is, this too shall pass. No matter where you are, it's going to pass. You know, whenever I go to the dentist, I remember that. I wake up that morning and say, you know what? At noon today, it'll be over. It'll be all behind me. This too will pass. I don't have to worry about that. It's going to be okay. No matter where you are, no matter how bad it may be right now, it's going to be okay. So remain faithful to the God who makes it okay. Father, thank you so much for your blessings to us. Sometimes we don't count them as blessings, Lord. Sometimes life gets hard. Sometimes the rumble seems more than we can bear. But you help us even through that. So, Lord, for those who are here today, and they are in the middle of their rumble, their testings, their difficult season in life, Lord, be with them. Comfort their hearts. Walk with them through this time and help them to know this will not last, but their relationship with you will. It's going to be okay. So, for those who are here today and are going through that, listen as they offer their prayers to you and prepare them for ultimate victory and to live with you forever. For I ask ask it in Jesus' name and for his sake. Amen. Would you stand with us?
Sing with us. This is the day, this is the day that the Lord hath made, that the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it, and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day, this is the day that the Lord hath made. This is the day, this is the day that the Lord hath made, that the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it, and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord hath made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day, this is the day that the Lord hath made.
And that is the truth. This is the day that the Lord has made. And we're going to rejoice and be glad in it, not because of our circumstances for many of us, but in spite of our circumstances. We're not rejoicing in our troubles and our trials. We're rejoicing in the God who made this day and who will walk with us through all those troubles and trials. So God go with you this week. Walk with you through the week. And we'll see you here next week. God bless you. You're dismissed.